What's happening? Julia Daniels, Reggie Wilson here for another Sports Plus. You ready to go?
I don't like that.
I don't know. It's just I got a lot of energy,
go.
I guess. Let's go. Seatbelt on. Let's do it. Okay, let's get started talking about the Wolves.
Okay.
Tim Connolly talked this week, and he talked about, hey, he's not necessarily against maybe blowing it up if it makes sense. There's been a lot of rumors. Kevin Durant, people saying like the Wolves need an alpha. They got some decisions to make. Naz Reid, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Julius Randle.
Yep.
They're all set to become free agents. You're Tim Connolly. What do you do?
Oh, that's so tough, right? I mean, out of the three of those, I'd be keeping Naz and Julius. And letting Nickeil walk. We were talking about this earlier because when you try to break down all the numbers and do all the math and this, that, and the other, they're going to be in a luxury tax either way. But I feel like
we were talking about the article is $250 million in salary, which will put them firmly into that second apron, which is just like a no-no.
Right. So you got to do something to switch it up. I would say Nickeil would be, if I was Tim Connolly, I would figure something out with Nickeil, letting him go, because if you think about the importance of the other two, I feel like they definitely have more of an influence when it comes to just winning games day to day. So, yeah, I think you do what you can to keep Julius around for sure, because, yes, he didn't end out, the Western Conference Finals were not his best series, but you saw the way that he played in the first two postseason series, and you think, okay, what can we build on from here? And I think that you can't just take that lightly when you're going into making decisions like this.
Yeah, so what you think about is Julius Randle the alpha that you need next to Anthony Edwards to get them past the conference finals?
Yeah.
Because that's where they are now. Like, they've done it twice in a row. All right, can they go to the finals with the team as constructed? I'll go one hand and the other. All right, on one hand, okay, if you bring them back, you're like, okay, this continuity.
Right.
They finally started to figure things out together and play well as a team late.
Yeah.
Spark the playoff run back to the Western Conference Finals, okay? But then on the other hand, you're like, oh man, it fizzled. The effort didn't look there. They looked like, at times like they had given up in that Western Conference Finals, and they need a little bit more. Is it a situation where Julius Randle is like Sam Darnold? And you're like,
right,
he played well, but
we have options.
Yeah, and then, Naz Reid, he kind of talked a little bit about it. The situation would just have to be right for him to come back. He wants to start. Nickeil probably earned more than what the Timberwolves would be willing to give him.
Right.
Chris Finch wants all his guys back. But it's like,
of course,
on another offseason, do you make another seismic move?
No, I don't think so.
To blow up the team and try to make it better again? We saw it happen already. Rudy coming here. You're like, okay, let's do 2 seasons of that. Then they're like, all right, Cat.
Bye, Cat.
We'll trade him.
Yeah.
And then this offseason, it's like, okay, some decisions need to be made. Do you blow it up and try to start new with Anthony Edwards obviously being the centerpiece?
Yes, and I think to your point about, Nickeil, the progression that we saw from him this season alone obviously made him more expensive. But to your point about Julius, too, and I'm going to say something maybe a little controversial.
Uh-oh.
I do think that Julius has a little bit of growing up to do, too, but I also maybe think that it has to do with he's getting used to Ant's personality. Because the whole, after the horrible shooting that we would see in these games postseason, and then Ant would be like, wow, and then Julius is laughing at it right next to him. It's like, someone, if we're going to count on Julius to be kind of that leadership role for Ant, because let's not forget that Ant is only 23, right? He needs something like that. Julius is going to have to get a little bit more serious than he was this season. Not to say that he wasn't serious, but we saw him start to rub off on Ant in terms of what we've talked about all the time about warm-ups, work ethic, getting ready for games, what he does for his schedule during the week, that kind of thing. But I think it's going to take more than that if we're going to count on Julius to kind of step into, if Mike Conley retires, that kind of role for him.
You know what's tough? is Mike Conley being the age that he is. If this
I
was
know.
10 years ago,
I know.
he's the adult in the room that kind of gets everything together. He's just not the same guy that he was when he was in Utah or even Memphis.
Right.
And if they had that guy, I think the Wolves are in a little bit better of a situation as far as corralling and kind of maturing. But you have to remember, you know, like you said, Anthony Edwards will be 24 in August. He's still young, and he's still on this maturation path, and not just his like demeanor and emotional wellness, but also his game as well. There are still levels that he could reach to be great, to take himself to even that next stratosphere of superstardom. And so you just kind of want to see, as he's growing, that they put the necessary pieces around him to make sure that as he's growing, the team is growing as well, and they can get past, because you don't want 2 straight Western Conference Finals and then you're in the play-in next year.
Right.
And, you know, you bounce from the first round.
Right.
So I think that's something that you want to try to get better at. And Tim Connolly, better you than me, brother.
No, I was going to say, I'm so glad I'm not in his position right now because he has some decisions to make.
Yes,
Oof.
yes. God bless. God bless. All right. Well, that's segment 1 here on Sports Plus. Julia and I will be right back, and we're going to talk a little bit about the other basketball team that occupies Target Center, and also a little Vikings talk. Welcome back. All right, let's talk a little Lynx. Nafisa Collier,
She's good.
Western Conference Player of the Month.
Yep.
After getting Western Conference Player of the Week. She's pretty good. Making
pretty
her
good at this
case
whole
for
basketball
MVP.
Yep.
So the Lynx are 8-0 to start the season. They made easy work out of the Phoenix Mercury on Tuesday night.
Yep.
Funny, Natisha Heidemann had 18 points off the bench. She's really coming on.
Oh my gosh.
She had the pretty much the game winner against the Mercury last week on Friday when they played them. And then she goes off and she hits a 3 like towards the end of the fourth quarter Tuesday night.
Yep.
And she does the night-night celebration.
Wow.
Get them out of here. So the Lynx, I think I was reading you guys this stat. There have been 8 teams who have started 8-0.
Yep.
Half of those teams have been the Lynx in
Yeah.
franchise history.
This says Minnesota started the season 8-0 for the 4th time in franchise history.
It was the Lynx and the Sparks.
The same amount as all of the other WNBA teams combined. Good job, Cheryl.
Excellent.
She's a pretty good coach.
I mean, she might be all right, you know?
She might be all right. No, Nafisa, I mean, what did we, women are amazing. What can I say? She's played her best basketball post becoming a mother, and
Love it.
It's one of the most inspiring things
Love it.
I think I've ever seen, much less how cool I get to cover it.
Yeah.
She's just phenomenal. I mean, she's everything that we expected and more this season. But Natisha Heidemann, she hasn't caught me by surprise necessarily, but I think she's unlocked what we would see little glimpses of last season.
Yeah.
Now we're like, what is happening? I think it has to do with Courtney Williams too,
yeah.
because I think there's friendly competition between the two, and they're also best friends, and so it just breeds excellent basketball.
Yeah, and I also think Unrivaled was great for her.
Yes.
She didn't get selected right away, but she ended up being like a replacement, and she ended up getting great minutes because the team that she was on had some injuries. And when you could just keep hooping and you don't, fall off, or there's no it's one thing to train like you're playing.
Right.
But nothing replicates actual games.
Yeah.
And she was able to play in Unrivaled, which was a great experience for all involved by all accounts.
Yep.
And I think that really, you look at Courtney, K-Mac, Natisha, Fee, obviously, all played in Unrivaled. They're all having solid starts to the season.
And for K-Mac to miss all of that time getting ready for the season and come back and just ball out.
Yep.
I mean, it says a lot about her as an athlete as well. So, it's the stacked team that we expected. It's the start we expected a great start. We could not have predicted the start that they've had. But at the same time, not particularly surprised by
Yeah.
this team. But the W competition level is
It's tough.
intense. This, I mean, it's always, I argue it's the most competitive league in professional sports. But this season in particular, wow. It's crazy this year.
Yeah.
So it's
Gotta-
fun to see.
Got to go through the aces, I'm sure, to get back to the finals. But I would love to see the Lynx and Liberty running back. Nafisa Collier last night, I call her Big Fee, not the little one. 18 points, 11 boards, 5 assists. Slight work.
Just a little double-double.
Slight work.
Just a little double-double for your Tuesday night.
Slight work. 50 in her career now, which even had A-Rod tweeting about it last night. So that's pretty awesome. So, all right, real quick pivot. Justin Jefferson, not usually a sighting that we see at Vikings OTAs.
Right.
He was there. He said the team asked him to come so he could continue to build some chemistry with J.J. McCarthy. What do you think about that?
I think it's not another not surprising thing for me.
Yeah.
Justin Jefferson is, it's not just for show either. Like, this is who he is as a person. He's a team guy. He's very humble. He has every reason not to be that person too.
Yeah.
And he knows that not only is it J.J. McCarthy that he should be getting to know, but there's a lot of new guys on this team too that he's wanting to make sure that the chemistry is right with, because he knows that he is that leader in the locker room.
Yeah.
Even though he's a wide receiver or whatever, he's Justin Jefferson. He knows he's the face of the franchise.
Yep.
And he knows that he sets the tone for the rest of the team. Because if you look at it, like, he missed OTAs last year, didn't affect his stats. Didn't. It didn't matter who was. And he tells us this all the time. And he's like, doesn't really matter who the quarterback is. Like, I'm going to get things done.
Yeah.
He's basically strictly at OTAs for the vibe.
Yeah, basically.
That's what he's there for.
Yeah, he told JJ, he was like, I tell JJ just like I tell everybody else, just throw it up there and I'll find a way to come down with it. I think this is not for Justin Jefferson. This is for JJ McCarthy.
Yeah.
Because he talked about how, like, you know, I'm different than other receivers. I have a long stride in my routes, and I do a little extra sauce at the top of my routes, and that's something that maybe JJ is not necessarily familiar with. And so this is really for McCarthy, because Justin's like, look, it doesn't matter who's back there. Like, I'm catching whatever you throw my way, one hand, two hand, whatever, doesn't matter. And so
Red fish, blue fish.
Vikings in 5. But I think that really smart from Justin's point of view, because what it really signals to me is that he wants to do whatever is possible to win. Justin was highly successful in college.
Yes.
Going into postseason play, going deep, winning a national championship. He has yet to win a playoff game in his professional career.
Yeah.
He's seen his guy Jamar, he's seen his guy Joe. You know, they've played in the Super Bowl already.
Yeah.
He wants to get there, and he knows that the more comfortable JJ gets throwing him the ball and really getting set in that offense, the better off the team will be.
Yeah. I think, you know, it's just how he kind of goes about his business anyways. But J.J. McCarthy also saw such a high level of winning when he was in college too, so I know he's desperate to get back to that. I mean, he's a competitor. What do you expect? But I do think he's been put in the best possible situation when it comes to being a redshirt rookie, quote unquote. And, you know, I think that we could expect good things from him, but I also think that there is patience to be had with somebody who has not had any experience in the NFL before. So who better to lead him than wide receiver one, that is Justin Jefferson.
Exactly. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
All right, also a no-brainer, honoring the legendary Jim Marshall, one of the best Vikings to ever put on the purple uniform. Got a special conversation talking about Jim Marshall after passing at the age of 87. Catch that after the break. Reggie Wilson here, talking about the passing of Jim Marshall at age 87, one of the Vikings' all-time greats, an Iron Man, and I'm joined by Vikings analyst Pete Bercich. Pete, thanks so much for taking the time.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Reggie. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So for those who maybe live under a rock or those not familiar with the Minnesota Vikings and their history, what does Jim Marshall mean to the Vikings organization?
I think if you go to the Vikings website and they have quotes from people that matter, right? Fran Tarkington, um, Bud Grant, Jim, just there's so many of his former teammates that talk about him. I remember Fred Zamberletti would talk about him all the time as well. And I'm sure we're going to get into some of the remarkable things that he achieved. Um, but I think the thing I remember most is the Ron Yari quote when he said that thing about Jim was when you were at your worst, he was at his best, or when things were at their worst, he was at his best. And when you look back on guys' careers, when it's the teammates around them that are saying that's the guy that picked me up, that's the guy that made me better, that's the guy that made me want to compete. What more can you say? Because when you leave the game, nowadays you're going to be taking away a little bit more money than they did in the past. But the one thing that never goes away is the respect that you earn from your teammates. And I don't think there's anyone um, who was with this organization from its founding that gets the respect or has earned the respect that Jim Marshall has. No question about it. He might be the Viking, the first Viking of this franchise.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you talk about just the legacy that he leaves. 19 seasons, 270 consecutive starts, 282 even beyond the Vikings. The owners, the Wolves, they called him just an all-time Iron Man. How crazy is that to see someone just play so many games, a record that stood until Favre broke the record in a Vikings uniform?
Yeah, it is. It's for a defensive lineman to do it. I mean, I think of all the things that Favre ever did, that's one thing. That record right there was probably the most impressive, and probably will never be broken. But for Jim Marshall to play such a physical position and do the same thing, um, it's remarkable. It's unbelievable to think about that man was around for the first 20 seasons of this franchise and never missed a game, never missed a start the entire time. It's unbelievable. It's hard to fathom, especially in this day and age when guys miss games. Kind of this. Let's put it this way: a lot more often than they used to, right? Um, and then I think the other thing is anyone out there who had the opportunity to shake Jim Marshall's hand will know and understand exactly why that guy was able to play for 270 consecutive games with the Vikings. Is he had a mitt. Like when you sit around the campfire, you're smoking a cigar and you're like, this guy this and this guy that. The size of Jim Marshall's hands always comes up. I mean, if the man made a fist, it would be bigger than Scott Studwell's head. I mean, it was just built like a tank, and he wore through everything because he got hurt throughout those 270 games, right? He got nicked up, but he continued to play, and I mean, what a legacy to lead, and I obviously, like, I'll go back to it. The respect that his teammates had for him, I think says everything.
How much of an injustice is it that while he was living, he didn't get a chance to see himself immortalized in the Hall of Fame?
Um, yeah, that's a tough one, man. I mean, that's a tough one. Just because you think about where he just from a numbers however you want to look at it, from a numbers standpoint, production on the field, um, his consecutive starts, all those things. It's hard to justify him not being part of it, right? And it's a huge question mark for me in all that. It's just to say that for him to miss that mark, I don't know. But again, I'm not making those calls. And the funny thing is, just because he didn't have HOF after his name doesn't mean, again, that the guys around him that he played with and against didn't think. he belonged there, or that's the quality of a man, that's the quality of a player that he was. So, um, yeah, he left it on the field, and people still talk about it. So what more can you say? Whether or not you have a bust, or whether or not you're, it's like that. I don't know. I think what really matters in this league, and what really matters to players, is they, retire and get older. He had all of that.
Pete, you're obviously a big football guy, and Jim Marshall was a guy who just was the most fiercest competitor. My father-in-law, he's from Houston, and he talked about how growing up, it was the Texans, he loved Earl Campbell, and then he loved the Vikings growing up because of guys like
Mhm.
Jim Marshall. He loved the Purple People Eaters. For those who may not understand, how fierce were those teams? I know, they got to those Super Bowls, didn't get a chance to win one, and that's
Yeah.
unfortunate. But how fierce were those Purple People Eater teams?
Uh, it was a unique, I think, part of a section of history, or section of time. And, in this day and age, I think the defensive front, and the defensive line is valued a lot more than it used to be. Um, but I think you were hard pressed to find four better defensive linemen to put on a field at one time. And then every team that played the Vikings, that was what, they were concerned with Tarkenton and his scrambling, and throwing the ball and that kind of thing. But it was the four guys on that defensive line that could absolutely wreck your day, could wreck your evening in a hurry, could wreck a game in a hurry. So those were the guys that you had to prepare for. Anybody that played the Vikings in the 60s or 70s, those were the guys that kept you up at night. That was the group that you had to be prepared. It was a different week for the offensive linemen. It was going to be more physical practice, all those things, because of the caliber of players. And the best part is because they were all together at the same time, on the field, there wasn't a weak point in that group, right? You couldn't just scheme to take out a specific player. You had to deal with all of them. So, you get one-on-ones across the board. Who are you going to double team? How are you going to do this? They changed the game. They changed game plans, just like we saw with Adrian Peterson and what he was able to do while he was here. Randy Moss. These guys changed the game, and that group is still talked about to this day. And I'm sure, we're going to talk about them for the next for the next 50, 60, 70 years, however long I'm around, who knows. But that group, that those Purple People Eaters, man, they made a lot of fans of the Vikings back in the day, when you couldn't just turn on a TV or pick up your phone and learn about it. It was hard to follow a team from somewhere else in the country back in those days. And man, they really created a lot of Viking fans.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Do you have any personal stories you want to share about your interactions with Jim Marshall? I know you've been around the team for years.
Um, you know, I never really had. I just met him at certain functions and those kinds of things. But he was always, um, the first thing whenever I saw Jim Marshall, the first thing I wanted to do was go up and shake his hand, just because it's just like it's a kick, right? And you find someone to take with you that's not ready for it, right? And you're like, let's go shake Jim's hand, right? And then you do all that, and then you talk about that for the next hour and a half. But just professional in every which way, shape, and form that I met him, and or how he conducted himself, and very humble man. I don't think sought the limelight. Um, but unfortunately, I didn't get to know him on a personal level. But uh, listening to his teammates talk about him, that's what I see. That's kind of the thing. That's what I know about Jim. What I know about Jim is what his teammates have said about him, and that to me is why I feel comfortable in speaking so highly of him, because I know what his teammates thought of him, and the impression that he made on those people.
Lastly, how should or how will Jim Marshall be remembered?
I think what he'll be remembered as is just the toughness, the durability. And I think that's, and you don't want to. I say that not undermining who he was as a player, right? But everybody that makes it to the NFL has certain aspects of their game that put them that they're exceptional, right? Whether it's the ability to run or the physicality or durability, or there's a lot of different aspects to any player. And for Jim, I think when you think of the image of a Viking that you want to project, right? And we go to the games now and you see the old film stock footage of out in the snow and in the cold and in the mud and the toughness and this is not your day to be, as a visiting team, this isn't going to be your day. You throw up a picture of Jim Marshall, right? And that accomplishes all of that intimidation factor right then and there. That's the guy. He is the guy that you think of when you want to let the opposing team know it's just not going to be your day. It's not going to be fun. It's going to be out in the cold and the mud and if this gets into a street fight, it's you're not going to win. Jim Marshall just putting his picture up on up on the jumbotron. It's like, yep, it's a Jim Marshall kind of day. That I think is his legacy and what he's all about.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome, Pete. Thanks so much for sharing those stories with me. And thanks so much for taking the time with me. Just a huge loss in not only Vikings fandom, but also just Minnesota and Minnesota sports. Jim Marshall passed away at the age of 87. Pete, thanks so much for taking the time.
Oh, thanks for having me on.